He was there. He was watching the people, his fellow schoolmates, classmates dying on the street. And we are survivors. And it's still very hard for me to watch this movie and see what has happened. And it's so hard to believe. Deng Xiaoping, many of you thought he was the hero of Chinese opening and reform, was the mastermind behind this whole military crackdown on these just very naive and peace and freedom and democracy loving young people. And without mercy, long before June 4th, he ordered the troops from all over China to gather to Beijing, and the military, almost the entire military force was mobilized with Deng Xiaoping's order, gathered to surrounded Beijing just to face these innocent young kids on Tiananmen Square, peacefully demanding a basic human rights. So I want to hand the microphone to Zhou Fengsuo. He was there from the beginning to the last day. He's very fortunately survived the massacre.
Thank you, Li. Thank you, Robert. This is a great documentary. I'm actually surprised to see myself there. I realize my English has improved quite a bit since then. Today I'm known as the number 5 most wanted student leader. Before that, I wasn't known at all in China. People in the inner circle probably knew what I did, but I never realized that I was so high up on the government's most wanted list. But that moment, when I saw my name on the TV, watching myself, being designated as the representative of such a great movement, I was proud of myself. And that gave me a new identity. I have to be the voice of this movement. And so that's how I started 34 years ago till today. I am a fortunate survivor. So it's my duty to tell what I experienced and to be the voice of these who cannot speak today. I was the first one to arrive on Tiananmen Square after Hu Yaobang's death to commemorate Hu Yaobang at the Monument of People's Hero. And I was also the last to leave when the tanks were coming in. In between, this was the most amazing time in China's history. Chinese people, on that time, they surprised the world with their courage, dignity, and even creativity. On Tiananmen Square, the most searing impression is that voices, all of a sudden, are coming from everywhere. People, for the first time, was able to speak from their own heart. That's so important. I would never forget that, because like today, you see Chinese people as being indoctrinated and brainwashed, but under this veil, there is definitely individual identity there, and that's a hope. Just quickly on the documentary, I'm really struck. I think the movie captured some very important message there. Bush was definitely lying when confronted this question whether he knew Deng Xiaoping was the mastermind of the massacre. He knew. Why? Because while we were still in prison, he sent, the first month, when I was in the high security prison in Beijing, he sent a special envoy to Beijing. I think his name is Schoolland, something. Right. And why? Because he knew Deng Xiaoping was guilty, and he wanted to comfort Deng Xiaoping. He basically sent a letter saying that, we have to do something on the surface, but we will stay as a partner of your government. That's what Bush did, and that was the US policy towards this murderous regime. Yeah, that I think this movie captured it really very nicely. But this is not only history. Why? Because this year, the exact day of the anniversary, Biden government sent like the highest ranking state government official in a long time to Beijing on that day, not mentioning anything about human rights, about Tiananmen. This is normalizing this massacre. So US government is colluding with China on this. I condemned this. And I was interviewed by many people, but my comments were censored in the Chinese media and in English as well. Fortunately, Reuters reported this. If you check, you find. I was probably the only one to condemn this. And so most people probably don't realize this is not history. That's what we are confronting now. What do we do with such a murderous government? Can we be a partner? No, we can't. So I think that's, if anything, that's what we should learn from this documentary. But there's also something else that's very important to note, this message of hope. One of the main characters there, Wan Runnan, he was the founder of the Sitong Company, the most famous Chinese private company in 1989, kind of disbanded later because they support the students on Tiananmen Square. Last October, there was one here. His name is supposed to be Peng Lifa. He started a protest on this bridge called Sitong Bridge, in Beijing, and it lasted for about 30 minutes. While the world was watching, it was broadcasted immediately everywhere. I couldn't believe it when I saw it, because there's a loudspeaker there saying, down with Xi Jinping, and zero COVID policy. And it's all done by one person. And he chose this location, this bridge that's named after this company in 1989. I was surprised that this bridge still exists today. Guess what? They scratched the name recently. Yeah, you don't see it anymore. But if you search the bridge, the Sitong Bridge on Google Map, you'll find the video footage of this protest. It's quite a thing. You see smoke coming out, the loudspeaker, he has a huge banner, and it took all these police 30 minutes to put him under control. That's kind of heroic protest that now, you have to do it individually because like organizing, it's not possible. And so that's the start of the protest last year. Eventually, it ended the zero COVID policy. So, that's direct link between 1989 and today's China. Of course, for the young people themselves here, they call themselves the new generation. Then their groups are called My Duty group. The phrase My Duty is picked up from 1989 because there's a very famous video about student going to Tiananmen Square. When asked why, he said, "It's my duty." So last year, most of the Chinese students who were protesting called themselves My Duty groups. So that's always an inspiration for change, for freedom in China. That's also very important to remember. Talking about that, I think there are two more cases I want to mention. So there, on the anniversary of Tiananmen Massacre this year, there was one brave woman. We don't know her name. I call her the hero of Linglong Ta because she climbed up to a high tower, a pagoda in Beijing, a very famous structure, holding American flag. And she was distributing flyers, starting, the content of the flyer is talking about, the first, she quoted the full content of the Declaration of Independence. And then she said, we want China to be a country where people want to stay, come and stay. We don't want China to be a country where people want to escape and flee. That's what's happening now. And of course, she was arrested. But there's just definitely growing resistance in China. And for me, I think it's such a privilege to work, to provide with people in China like her. Of course, we didn't start all these protests, but we are trying our best to help. And we have provided annually to hundreds of political prisoners in China for decades now. And their story, their people's courage, persistence, against all odds, in such hopeless situation, it's just so inspiring. For me, that's just like the spirit of the tankman. It's precious. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Yeah. Thank you, Fengsuo. And I'm taking liberty to represent Wu Kaixi, who's featured in the film as the #1 wanted by the Chinese government. He really wanted to be here, but there's so many schedule conflicts because he's just right after the memorial of June 4th massacre. He was invited to speak all over the world, so he couldn't be here, but he would love to be here. And there's one story I want to share was, including Fengsuo and Wu Kaixi, they are banned from returning to China. They haven't seen their parents, loved ones, for all these 30-some years. The very last time Wu Kaixi saw his father was the day before the massacre. The Chinese government forced his father to come to the university, and when Wu Kaixi was on the stage and telling the student to stand steadfast for their demand for freedom and democracy, and the Chinese government brought his father just before the stage and begging him to go home and give up. He said, "Father, it's too late, I'm not giving up." That was the last time he saw his father. And including Fengsuo and many of my fellow fighters, they haven't seen their loved ones for 35, 36 years. And the price to pay for freedom, to fight for freedom, is big. And when I asked them, "Will you do it again if it, returned to 36 years ago?" they say yes. And they're the true hero for the fight for freedom. And we need to support them, behind them, not just by saying it, but by actions, by whatever means. Because Fengsuo now is the head of 2 organizations. Would you introduce your organizations?
Thank you. I have lots of organizations to support, to manage. So I'll just name two, three. So I'm now Executive Director of Human Rights in China. Human Rights in China was founded in March of 1989, so 1 month before the Tiananmen protest by the overseas Chinese students in America. It was just by its name to promote human rights in China when there's none. And so it's the longest serving human rights organization in United States by Chinese here. We are facing a lot of challenges, but the memories of Tiananmen, a lot of it was kept by human rights in China, especially in the early years. We supported Tiananmen mothers, and every year we are the official voice of Tiananmen mother when they make statements regarding their situation, and we support them directly. We are also actively training activists, both inside and outside China, on internet security, on civil society tactics. So that's what Human Rights in China does. My other organization, which I co-founded about 20 years ago, Humanitarian China, our primary work is to support political prisoners in China by providing them financial support and raise awareness of their situation. So we know more about the political prisoners than any other organization, and we have probably the best credibility among the political prisoners. We have provided thousands of individual cases of support, and nobody was implicated because of receiving our support, because we have done it in a very safe kind of conducive way, just to serve them. So that's humanitarian China. I'm also very actively involved in this project of the Tiananmen Museum. Actually, have brought with me the brochure about Tiananmen Museum. So this museum now is officially open in Manhattan. It's at a premier location between Penn Station and the Empire State Building. So when you visit, let me know. I'd love to give you a personal tour because most of the items on exhibition are from my own collection. For me, behind every item, there's just such a story. It's amazing to tell. That's a few. We also have another project that I'm involved in. It's called the Liberty Sculpture Park in Southern California. So we have 30 acres of land there, right by the Highway 15 between Los Angeles and Las Vegas. There we have erected the first and only CCP virus sculpture in 2021, and it was burned down 1 month after its erection. This was a direct attack of CCP on U.S. soil, burning down the sculpture. Basically, the sculpture, it's pretty striking. So half of it is a skeleton, half of it is the face of Xi Jinping. Guess he wouldn't be happy with it. That's why he was doing this directly in the United States. We haven't caught the perpetrators yet. So that's the other project. If you are in Los Angeles, you can check out Liberty Sculpture Park.
You really need support, financial support for these projects. And I just want to give some more details about his work about supporting the political prisoners in China. And my father was a political prisoner in China by the Communist Party. So I knew how, it's a very terrible situation because the Chinese prison guard and police randomly tortured all these political prisoners because there's no rule of law in China. So what Fengsuo is doing is to make those political prisoners' name known outside of China. So when they become known outside of China, the Chinese police in the the prison guard will be a little bit nicer to these political prisoners. And on the another thing is, in China, when you become a prisoner, you have to bring your own everything, your toothpaste, your toothbrush, your everything. I don't know about prison here. I think you don't need to bring everything, and you have to pay for your own haircut and everything. So a lot of political prisoners, they don't have any money because they don't have anything anymore. So they can't even pay for their toothpaste and toothbrushes. So we, people outside, we want to help them. So we contribute $1, $3, $10, $100 here and there, so they can have a toothpaste. They can have a towel to wash their face. They can have money to have a haircut, and things like that is so crucial to keep them sane because a lot of them were about to give up because facing all the torture and all the terrible things, and the family usually left them because if you are connected to prisoners, political prisoners, you lost. The spouses will have no jobs, and the children could not go to school because I was a political prisoner kid, so I knew it's all about it. So the work is not just saying we support you, but we are really supporting them so they can survive, hopefully. And Fengsuo himself was a political prisoner as well. And it's beyond imagination with the treatment and the torture. So that's why we're trying, what he's trying to do is to get help, both in media or awareness and financial help. It doesn't take much, a couple of dollars, it'll make a huge difference. Sometimes force them to release the political prisoners earlier.
Thank you. That's very important. We definitely, over the years, we have fortunately received many feedbacks like this. Just a few months ago, I was conferencing with a newly released political prisoner. He was probably like among the youngest political prisoner in China. And he said, while in prison, there was another political prisoner that nobody knew about. Nobody could confirm his identity. He was critically ill, like dying. He was begging the prison guard to give him medication, whatever. And the guard told him that, if you die now, it will just save us trouble. So he was witnessing this, but he knew he was tortured to the point that at that point he was depressed, he wanted to commit suicide. But all the time, he knew that his situation was different because there are people who are advocating for him. And the prisoner guard knows that. That's, in a lot of cases, the difference of life and death.
We have time for questions. Okay, any questions? Okay.
Oh yeah, there's microphones up here if you'd like to step over to those so that the audience can hear you.
Yes, were there members of the Chinese army that refused to go against the students?
Yes. Actually, I knew this well. I was on Tiananmen Square, but I got to know more and more over the years of the whole picture. While on Tiananmen Square, there were many soldiers who would come to us wanting to show support, but we were just students, and we were more or less like petitioners trying to plead the government to the Senate. We are not ready to take arms, especially before the massacre. So we just thanked them and let them go. I didn't know what happened to them. But there is this one very famous general. He was the commander of the 38th armed troops. He was like the most. He was commanding the most elite troop, and he refused to carry out Deng Xiaoping's order. So he was court-martialed before the massacre. And in our museum, there's one shirt, a blood-stained shirt. This shirt belonged to a journalist She worked for PLA Daily, the military newspaper, but she was with the protesters at the evening of the massacre. When she was beaten almost fatally, she could just show her badge and be safe. But she was so outraged that she'd rather die, than being identified with these murderous troops. That's the kind of the story I came to know only many years later.
And when Deng Xiaoping mobilized the troops from all over China to surround Beijing long before June 4th, and they were all captured in the military camp and forbid to read any news, listen to radio, read newspaper. The only newspaper they were allowed was the military newspaper because Deng Xiaoping wanted them to be totally ignorant of any things happening on Tiananmen Square because he knew the soldiers will have sympathy because they have the same feeling or demand or desire for a better China. So they were strictly forbid to know anything about what's going on for a month. For a month. And then when they were ordered to go to Tiananmen Square to face the student and to point their weapons to the student, they were told those people are anti-communist and try to damage China and all these brainwash propaganda. That's why a lot of them were confused.
Yeah, I mean, Deng Xiaoping was so insecure that for 2 weeks, she wouldn't even allow the soldiers to watch TV, to listen to radio, to read government newspaper, because he was fearful that he's losing control. He only trusts the military newspaper. But even within the military newspaper, we have this brave journalist who'd rather die than being identified with a soldier. So that's the situation.
Yes, ma'am?
So American entrepreneurs are the most generous in the world. Has there been any effort to have American entrepreneurs financially help? Are they afraid to help?
No. Of course, this is like first time I speak to such audience. We didn't have such good chance before. But in the past, we have been so marginalized. I think most people just so afraid of endangering their business opportunity, especially if they are successful and if they work for multinational, for example. But I believe there's a lot more we can do. We definitely need help from American business community, individuals.
Two very clear examples of that, or a few, would be the NBA, of course, which has backed down entirely on confronting China.
Yeah.
Nike will not confront China. Hollywood,
Yes.
all you have to do is read any of the many examples of how terrified the studios are of losing access to the Chinese market and the things that they will include and not include in films to appease them. It's tremendous.
The biggest box office income is
Yeah.
from China.
Yeah, it's the largest population who
And,
can access films.
You can watch the credit on the movie Mulan, and they even written there, they used the Uyghur concentration camp as the filming site.
Question. So the CIA has a history of fomenting revolutions and coup d'etats in countries around the world. But until 2020, or technically 2021, after January 6th, we had never seen the National Guard come around for months around the capital of the country. And it seems very similar to Chinese style. In what ways do you feel China is influencing what's happening in Washington in terms of this administration?
Well, I think China is definitely a model for people who want control, especially for tyrants. A lot of people may love that kind of model, for the so-called safety it provides at the cost of individual freedom, especially now, with the help of technology. Most people probably don't realize, the extent that this zero COVID is having. People were living in prison in their own home, and like even their body parameter were measured and reported, sometimes remotely. That's kind of situation where people are in. I think that kind of model definitely has appeal to many people in the world. That's what we are fighting against.
And of course, it was not just this administration, but the Trump administration that modeled their COVID policies based on what China was doing. And of course, not just here, but around the world. I mean, it's kind of like, we sometimes talk in the US about the dangers of California. And what California does, the rest of the country often follows. But we see that now. So much of what China does, the most authoritarian regimes, the rest of the world takes note and says, we can get away with this.
But didn't, under the Trump administration, didn't they follow what the protocol was for an epidemic? You're like blaming him for something.
Well, I believe it was his administration who was in charge during COVID, and so...
Right, so what did he do wrong?
The lockdown?
But isn't that
The mandate of
isn't that standard for epidemics?
mask mandate?
It's not
Yeah.
standard? No, lockdowns are not?
But this was encouraged by the federal government and the departments there.
Yeah.
He was a federal employee, as far as I'm aware.
Well, if I can say, I think this is, from my point of view, the policy, for example, toward China is a bipartisan issue. In the past, both parties were wrong in engaging China, but now I think we are seeing the reverse. Definitely, there are bipartisan support, especially from the younger generation, in changing this policy. I'm really happy for some of the changes. For example, the newly formed CCP committee in U.S. Congress. Mike Gallagher is doing amazing work, and with support from the Democrats. And I think that's very important.
Yes, ma'am?
I would really like to know what you believe the American policy should be toward China, noting that other than calling out their human rights abuses, noting that they have nuclear weapons, we have nuclear weapons. We would like to have a peaceful coexistence in the world. How should we approach China? And also noting that the people, like the students who want freedom, also have no guns, and that any kind of munitions really rest with the government. How should we support any kind of change? What should be our position?
For now, as this movie has pointed out, and I have talked about, United States, for most part, has colluded with Chinese government, mostly through, for example, investments while there's genocide basically enabling China to do horrible things against Chinese people. What's more important, CCP always sees United States as a top enemy to conquer. And it's not a secret. They never even had it. they put it openly in public. They educate the kids from kindergarten in that kind of language. It's the United States who's faking ignorance from Washington down. That's a problem. Yeah. We are facing this enemy. For example, recently there's a report about US government being hacked, including the Commerce Department and the State Department, all that. We have been facing this all the time. And the technology that enables Chinese government, for example, to shut down our accounts at Zoom and to hack into the IP address of Chinese dissidents at change.org, same technology applies to every American citizen. Yeah, this is a war, but the United States has no coherent policy against it. It's not a matter like we want war. We need to defend what we have. Well, we are losing ground. We're giving up willingly. That's the situation we are facing now. So it has to be changed. I was beaten by Chinese who support CCP regime while San Francisco police was watching. I asked the police, I said, did you allocate this place to CCP supporters? He said, no. I said, I'm an American citizen. You should protect me. He just shrugged. And one of my friends was beaten with head injury, bleeding, almost fatally. And there was not even a report. I called every news media. Nobody wanted to report it, even. And the only place that had some coverage with my picture was a Chinese website, saying that we were Tibetan separatists being beaten by Chinese patriots. Yeah, that's what we have been facing.
Real quick, last two questions. Go ahead, sir.
I heard it reported on TV that there are now several police stations in US cities, including New York. As far as you know, is that indeed correct? And what's their purpose? To intimidate Chinese citizens?
Of course. That's basically open secret in Chinese diaspora community. Actually, I was the one who organized this protest in front of the police station in Chinatown with the help of Mike Gallagher and two other congressmen, and that highlighted the issue of this that's happening here. Basically, with the investments and the technology, they control the Chinese community here, and that's just what surfaced. There's a lot of behind it. But I think on this, I applaud FBI for doing a wonderful job recently addressing this. Many were arrested as a result, so that's a good beginning.
Sir?
Yeah, I was wondering if you could speak to how the protesters were initially mobilized and maybe why that that's not possible today. I think you had alluded to that a little bit.
No, yeah, that's a very good question. First, I think globally, it was the movement globally away from communism. So in that same year, Berlin Wall fell, and Soviet Union and the Eastern Bloc, saw the collapse of communism. So that's same thing that's happening in China. In fact, one of the first our goal was to form a national solidarity student movement that's basically motivated by what happened in Poland, the Solidarity Union that eventually took over Poland from a communist government. So that's a global context. But of course, I believe this people's love for freedom, it's just human nature. For me, when I read like Declaration of Independence, there's no other document that tells so well about how we should form government. And that's basically my first speech on Tiananmen Square. I think the communism is against human nature. And that's why we have seen these recent protests. And so what makes this recent protest possible, I think there are two important reasons. I think both of these are still valid today and into the future, and that's where we can do a lot. First is that the international organizations definitely can bring change because, for example, because we watch this movie and this message can go back to China, because people like us. And why that's possible? Because even with the firewall, there are still millions of people who want free information, and especially in times of crisis. Mm-hmm. So during the pandemic, I think we estimate there are probably between 50 million to 100 million VPN users. And so they basically follow the message. And even though we are so marginalized, but we represent a free China. So we have the narrative, and this is what eventually led to the protest in China. So I think in the future, these are also important areas we can work on.
I think we are out of time for more questions, but I just want to thank everybody who chose to be here, because you can choose to have a drink with friends and dinner and relax, but not only you chose to watch the movie and also stay behind and listen to us. We really, really appreciate. And this is not the fight just for the Chinese people, because China today is the biggest threat to human race in the whole world. So the people from the free part of the world, we need to be aware of this, and it's everybody's fight, because freedom is not guaranteed. If we don't fight to keep, we lose it. And the Chinese people lost it, and Hong Kong, people in Hong Kong is losing it, and many part of the world. So thank you so much for